Tar Heels win it against Syracuse 88-82. So Carolina won. That's good. A couple things stand out to me about this game. One, the Tar Heels shot the three-point shot very well. That's good. They were 13 of 28, 46%. That extends a number, Adam, that is one of the more deciding factors for Carolina this year, in my opinion. They are now 13-4 on the season when they shoot 30% or better from three. 30. I didn't say 40%. 30%. A pretty pedestrian number. Who are those four losses to, you may ask? Kansas, Auburn, Michigan State, and Duke. So what does that tell you? That even when Carolina shoots the three at a decent clip, the Tar Heels are not an elite team. But when they shoot the three at a average clip, Carolina's probably a top 30 type of team, 15 to 30, somewhere in that range, which is what I thought this team would be coming into the year. They just haven't shot the three we're 30%. Not 35, not 40, not even 33, not one out of every three, 30%. So that, of course, if they're 13-4, that means they're 2-7 when they shoot below 30%. So they've shot below 30% in a game 9 times this year with this team that is perimeter oriented. So it just furthers that evidence that if this team can shoot the three at a decent clip, they're a pretty good team. They're okay. They're not an elite team, but they're pretty good. Number 2, the absolute importance of the 4 position in the style of offense that Hubert Davis likes to play. We've talked about this many times since Hubert Davis became the head coach, and it's very evident through the years. When it's Brady Manick at that spot, when it's Harrison Ingram at that spot, who are consistently productive, Tar Heels have been pretty good. When it's been Dawson Garcia or Pete Nance, and let's be clear, if Carolina had Dawson Garcia or Pete Nance on this team, they would start and play 38 minutes a game. Let's be clear about that. And then this year, where they just haven't gotten the productive, consistent production from that position that they wanted, but all of a sudden you had this Jalen Withers performance, and he was legitimately good. 19 points, 7 of 10 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3, made both his free throws, 6 rebounds, played good defense. And all of a sudden, the Tar Heels were a completely different team, and they were a completely different team for multiple reasons. 1, he was good. 2, Drake Powell could play some spot minutes there at that position, but play on the perimeter a little more, where, for example, he challenged shots of J.J. Starling late a couple of times in really big defensive efforts by him. And it just makes Carolina a better team. And it just gives them some more size. I mean, Jalen Withers is a legit 6'9". Now, you have not seen Jalen Withers prove that he can do, and you're not going to get 3 for 4 from 3 and 19 points every time, but could you get that kind of effort on the glass and defensively every time? Absolutely you could. But I'm not sure that he's proven that he can do that. But if he could, what a different team this would be. And then finally, Adam, Syracuse was not good in the first half, and J.J. Starling got in foul trouble, and they struggled. They were much better in the second half. The Tar Heels led by 8 at halftime, and it was 11 late. But it just, again, there's a reason why Carolina has played now 12 games decided by 6 points or less. Carolina just can't put anybody away. If the Tar Heels, the Tar Heels could have been up 17 or 18 points at halftime of this game. Like, they were that much better than Syracuse in the first half. But just a couple lapses kept it from being that. And so then Syracuse, to its credit, played much better in the second half. J.J. Starling, who didn't play well or much in the first half, really had a great second half. Lampkin, their big guy, is a tough matchup for the Tar Heels because he's big, period. And he's pretty skilled, actually. I mean, he's a solid player down there. And so then it became a close game again. Although the Tar Heels never trailed in this game. They led by trailed 4 nearly 36 minutes of this game. Syracuse was able to tie it once or twice in the second half. But it didn't need to be this way. The Tar Heels could have been up much more at halftime. So all of that sounds like I'm not trying to say something negative. I mean, Tar Heels won the game. But I just think it reinforces a lot of things that we already know about this team.
And the final piece being that Carolina is pretty much better than these types of teams.
Yes.
Which is what's upcoming. That's what this stretch is about, these types of teams. The question is, how can you take the next step from being 6 points better and having to sweat it out to being 12 points better and putting them away earlier in the game, as Jones was talking about? As far as Jalen Withers goes, I thought it was encouraging that he did more than just – he wasn't just making threes. He also had a couple big three-point plays where he was aggressive going to the rim.
And was running in transition. One of those baskets, I think that was a three-point play, was he was running hard in transition, and R.J. Davis pushed it ahead and found him. I mean, it was what you're supposed to do.
I do think it's risky for us to sit here and say, if you could get this every time from him, because we're 1 3/4 seasons into watching him play for Carolina now, and that's not been who he is yet. It would be unexpected yet delightful if over the remainder of this season he was close to that guy just effort-wise. Like, as you said, probably not 19 points a game-wise, but just put him out there and be confident that you're going to get something. So that would be a huge bonus. This 30% three-point thing fascinates me. So I guess part of that is because R.J. Davis shot so poorly for the first half of the year. And then at the time he came around, which he now pretty much has, Ian Jackson fell off.
Yeah.
So you haven't had a long stretch where multiple Tar Heels have been shooting it well from three all at the same time, which would boost those team percentages. I mean, 30 is a low bar.
Low bar.
And Carolina shot a ton. Like, if you could chop off maybe the 5 worst three-point attempts of every game, the percentage comes up because there have been some bad ones. But that's a crazy number to me. Like, that, if you sat there in September and said, okay, if the Tar Heels can just shoot above 30% from three in games, they will be a solid NCAA tournament team in the top 6 or 7-ish seeds and in the top 4 or 5 teams in the ACC. I would say that is doable. It has proven to be more difficult than that.
Yeah.
That is, to me, that's something that's more doable over the rest of the season than expecting someone to suddenly be someone they haven't been prior to now. But Carolina hasn't been that team prior to now.
Yeah, I mean, R.J. Davis was 3 for 9 from 3 in this game.
That's still above 30?
Yeah. Oh, but he's been, to your point, I think he was at 44% from 3 the last 7 games. So a little, I mean, not as good in this game, but still hit a couple important ones. Ian Jackson, who we haven't even talked about yet, was 5 for 10. Drake Powell was 1 for 2. Jalen Washington made a 3. But the outlier there is Withers, 3 of 4. I think he made 5 in the first 2 games this year and had made 8 the rest of the season. And then he made 3 in this game. So you'd absolutely love this to be closer to the norm because there's no question Jalen Withers is physically talented. I mean, he is as athletic on an athletic team. He is as athletic as anybody. He and Seth Trimble are probably the two most, and Ian Jackson and Drake Powell. I mean, these are all just athletic guys. But Withers is in that conversation. And when he is engaged defensively, he's pretty good because he has long arms. He has size. He is athletic. He does a nice job.
Hubert Davis was very complimentary of his defense when he talked to you after the game.
Yeah, and I do think he impacted the game in ways other than just his points. I do think that. The points were obviously huge. So Carolina did what it needed to do. It needed to win the game. The Heels have struggled here recently on the road. They had lost 4 in a row on the road. Syracuse has 2 good players. J.J. Starling and Eddie Lampkin are really good, and both of them played well. Lampkin the entire game, Starling in the second half, and the Heels did what they needed to do to win the game. All in all, a good weekend because Carolina won the game, and you hope the shooting and the production at that position continues because it will give Carolina a much better chance to be successful if it does.
It's, I guess, a little frustrating that you're depending on this highly variable aspect of the game, 3-point shooting, at this juncture of the year with so many talented players. I mean, Carolina has the ability to score in other ways than just shooting threes. And we fully acknowledge, like, the equation for this year was supposed to include a guy who shot 45% from 3 last year who didn't get off the bench at the Carrier Dome or whatever it's called now. That's a big part of what this was supposed to be. But the fact that we're not sitting here saying, like, well, Elliot Cadeau's really showing he can control the game offensively, and that's a big part of Carolina's offense. That's just not where they are right now. For one, because sometimes the best lineup doesn't have him on the floor. So you have to depend on things like 3-point shooting that just by its nature, there are going to be off nights. And you're at the point in the season where you can't afford any more off nights because you have to beat these teams. If you don't beat these teams, these kinds of teams, you don't deserve to go to the NCAA tournament anyway because these are not NCAA tournament teams.
Just 2 more quick things. I agree in the sense, but from game 1, the question, I remember Tyler Zeller brought this up very early in the season. If Carolina, and you did too on this show, like, what's the go-to? If Carolina is in a spot where it just has to have a basket? I think in the recent past, you're doing something with R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot, right? Like, one of those 2 guys is going to get a look. R.J. Davis is still here, but he's having to work much harder to get those looks. And, of course, as we know, Armando Bacot is not. So it just has not – the constant isn't there. And I will say this for Cadeau. When Carolina needed a basket, he got him a basket in this past game. He went right by the guy who was guarding him. I can't even remember who it was. Maybe I think it was Jaquan Carlos, ACC legend. And he went right by him and laid it up. And Carolina had to have the basket. Syracuse had cut the game to 2 with like 50 seconds left. And that basket was one of the deciding factors of the game. Now, Cadeau also only played 18 minutes because he again got in foul trouble. And so you have the yin and the yang there of the story of Elliot Cadeau, which has been when he's been good, he's been really good, and Carolina's been good. But when he's struggled, it affects not only his production, obviously, but Carolina's as a team. So he did get the basket when they needed it.
Part of the story of the year is that there's a yin and a yang for so many different Tar Heels.
Yeah.
I mean, we already talked about the Jalen Withers. There's been a lot of ups and downs. There's really no one on this year's roster who can say, I've been the same guy every single time out, 3/4 of the season gone.
That's a great point.
You can count on me every time.
Who do you think's been the most consistent? I'd probably still say R.J. Davis, because even though he shot so poorly at the beginning of the year, I think it has gotten better over the last half of the season. And when that's the choice, because I think R.J. himself would say he hasn't had as consistent a year as he would want.
It's tricky with him because the volume's been so high that the points are high also.
Well, yeah, but he's shooting less than he did last year. He's shooting on average 2 or 3 shots fewer per game than he did last season.
I do think I would pick him as probably you know who sneakily, like, I kind of feel like I pretty much know what he's going to do every game?
Drake Powell?
Vin Allen Lubin.
Oh, Vin Allen Lubin.
Like, I have a pretty good idea of what a Vin Allen Lubin game is going to look like when I go to the game.
Yep.
That doesn't mean it's spectacular. And will there possibly be some moments that I'm frustrated with Vin Allen Lubin? Yes. But overall, I pretty much know. If he shoots it, it's probably going in.
You know what I respect about Vin? He dunks it a lot. I
respect
respect you for dunking it, Vin Allen Lubin.
Yeah.
You don't mess around. Just dunk it. So Adam, the last part of this that we hadn't talked about is Ian Jackson. 8 of 15 from the floor, 5 of 10 from 3. Oddly, 2 of 6 at the free throw line. But 23 points, 16 of them came in the first half. Of course, he had not made a single field goal over the last 2 games. He had been 0 of 11, and I laugh just because of how crazy that is. You know, Hubert Davis said that the two of them had sat down and talked this week, and the main event there was that teams had adjusted to him, and now it was time for him to adjust to them. I don't know. I'm not basketball savvy enough to tell you if there were some major adjustments in this game. The shots went in more, and that's good. It's good that he is a better free throw shooter than 2 for 6. I think getting 6 free throws is good. I mean, he had 0 attempts at the line. I think it was 3 the last 5 games or 3 the last 6, something like that. And for somebody who has been aggressive offensively and is a good shooter and a good free throw shooter, if those numbers aren't what you want. So that part is good. I didn't think he was forcing it necessarily. He does some Ian Jackson things where he'll have an open corner 3. He won't take it. He'll then dance around and try the exact same shot, but at a higher level of difficulty, but it goes in sometimes. So the performance tells you that he did something better. I'm not savvy enough to tell you if there was some kind of something outside of the shots went in more. But I do know this. I am savvy enough to tell you this. When he scores, Carolina is a whole different team. They're a team that they're probably an NCAA tournament team when Ian Jackson is scoring. And when he's not, I don't think it's a huge surprise, Adam, that when he struggled, hold on, I'm got to get this too good of a note for me not to get it right. You just hold on, Adam. You're going to be impressed by this one. Hold on. Okay. So Ian Jackson's been struggling, right? And the Tar Heels in that time period had scored fewer than 75 points in 6 of the last 7 games. They can't score enough when he doesn't score. The end.
I do hope his takeaway from that game was not, if I just take 10 3-pointers, problem solved. The same way that we were saying when he was shooting such a high percentage from 3 earlier in the year, I don't really think that's who he is. He's not a 50% 3-point shooter. He was on Saturday, and Carolina needed it, and that was great. But what he does that Carolina doesn't have, because Carolina has guys who will shoot threes. Trust me, that is covered. What he does that they don't have is a guy who's dangerous going to the rim, running in transition and getting all the way to the basket and scoring through contact. I mean, when he was really going, there were a lot of old-time 3-point plays in there. So it's nice to have that one night where you feel like you kind of get on track from the perimeter, but I'm not sure Coach Davis likes to say things are or are not sustainable. I'm not sure that is sustainable at this point in his career. But if that gets him on track to feeling like, okay, I feel pretty good about taking my guy, I'm going to take this guy to the basket, that's when he's so dangerous and so helpful to this Carolina team. Which the free throws that you talked about are a testament that he was doing that some on Saturday.
One totally random note about this game. Why does Naheem McLeod not play more for Syracuse? Carolina couldn't handle him.
No.
The Florida State transfer is 7'4". Like, obviously Adrian Autry knows his team better than I do. That he's 7'4". Then Allen Lubin was standing next to him, and it was like when JoJo was in here from gymnastics standing next to me.
Look, if Syracuse isn't going to use him,
yeah, look, Naheem,
we can work out a waiver wire deal right here.
Just to show you that sometimes the plus-minus stat, which we have referenced before on here, isn't the end-all, be-all. Eddie Lampkin was minus 18 in this game for Syracuse. And he had 26 points and 11 rebounds. And I thought was pretty impactful. And he wouldn't miss any free throws. 58% shooter, he was 8 for 9. J.J. Starling, a 70% shooter, was 10 for 10. Meanwhile, Carolina's got Ian Jackson going 2 for 6.
Well, part of the problem is that they took 19 between the two of them.
Well, Syracuse shot 19 free throws in the second half. They shot 3 in the first half and 19 in the second half. Because they remembered they could just drive to the basket. And they did. And it almost got them back in the game. But it didn't. The Tar Heels win 88-82. Energy level low in the Dome, Adam. That's my report from the Dome. The weather was bad. The energy level was low.
I think that's kind of an ACC-wide problem.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Syracuse here. I arguably, after Carolina and Duke, the third most successful program historically in the league, understanding that all that success occurred when they were not in the league, but arguably the third most successful team in the league. Certainly Louisville and State and some other teams would argue that fact, but you get my point. They want a lot of energy for this game. Now, they're 11-15 now. But to be determined. I think and again, as we've said, Carolina is firmly a reason for this as well. A team that needs to be good for the ACC to be as good as it can be. Like Syracuse needs to be good, and it's not very good right now.